Manchester United 3, Southampton 1. Nice and straightforward, right? Right? It was never in doubt, apart from the first hour, where we were genuinely terrible at playing football, and we sort of relied on Southampton dropping off and Ahmad being unbelievable to turn the game round. All things that we will be looking at in today's video. If you could quickly subscribe first, it would be greatly appreciated, so please do that. And then we'll break down what actually happened in this game. So let's not waste any time here. Let's get straight to a tactical board and look at what was going on in this match. Because for me, there were two areas that Manchester United really struggled with, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. The first area is going to be when we are trying to play out from the back. We know that under Ruben Amorim, we want to be a side that control the ball, that dominate possession, and slowly move through the pitch. But you are only able to do that as a team if you can get the ball through the first phase. And United had a lot of problems here. The main problem was that Southampton were applying a man-to-man press, which we will look at shortly, but also that the Manchester United structure, which I've had a concern with for a while to be fair, had a problem in this game. So we're going to see Lisandro Martinez and Leny Yoro split either side of Onana. The problem we have is that De Ligt is then going to go into midfield. Now, I'm not a big fan of this. I've said it for quite a while that I'm not a fan of this particular structure. Even in games when we've won, I have criticised this. Because the problem it creates is, as Southampton come forward onto the press, we end up with a two in midfield of De Ligt and Ugarte. Now, Ugarte's been playing really well recently and shows great moments of press resistance, but he's still not a player who in these positions is active enough to really demand the ball all the time. He's alright as a secondary player, but not as your main player. And then obviously De Ligt in there, he's not a midfielder. So he doesn't want to receive the ball with his back to goal and turn out of these positions. He doesn't fancy it at all. And what that means is that we don't really have a central option, so we have to move out wide. And for the opposition, that makes pressing us quite easy in moments, because they know we can't play through the middle of the pitch, and this is a structural, tactical problem. So we get forced wide where we get a little bit stuck. And I want to use this clip here to sort of talk about this. 13 minutes into the game, United haven't started the match particularly well, and Leny Yoro passes the ball back to Andre Onana. Now, the player I want us to focus on here is De Ligt, but also his partner in crime here, Ugarte. Now, this is 13 minutes and 1 second into the game, and what I want you to do is keep an eye on the clock, but also keep a look at the movement at the two in midfield. Because 3 seconds later, they haven't really moved. They've actually just got closer together, which actually means they're easier to mark. Look how close together the Southampton players are, and they're covering several United players at once. Fast forward a few more seconds, they still haven't really moved. They've not changed the angle. They've not dropped deeper or pulled wider. They've stood there and not really done anything. And also, in the process, sort of blocked the pass to Kobbie Mainoo as well. De Ligt isn't really offering anything in this position, and this is a structural issue at the moment. Now, the other issue that United had in this game was that even if we could play through the first phase and get towards here, settle on the ball, we were then against a team which was playing the exact same structure and formation against us. And this was something that I was talking about in the stream before the match. I was worried that we wouldn't naturally have any tactical overloads anywhere, because we're playing a very similar structure, and that means therefore we are relying on individuals, and I've said it quite a lot. I think man-to-man, individually, I don't think there's a team we can play through in 1-versus-1 battles, because most teams have more athleticism, more physicality, more intensity in these situations, and it obviously created a problem, and we can kind of see the natural matchup. The left centre-back's got the ball for us, the right winger is going to come out for them, and it all really just matches up quite simply, basically. And Southampton, for the first hour of this match, were incredibly intense with their press. Fair play to them. They did a really good job. They had moments where they didn't quite get it right, but largely speaking, they were intense in the way that they played. And to put it really simply, Manchester United could not deal with it. You can see it in these moments here. Literally, man for man in all of these positions. The matchups are very obvious because the two teams are playing a similar structure, and it forces United to play backwards. And again, we've already seen, once we were backwards, we then couldn't get the ball out again. Again, in a moment like this, we've got the ball around the halfway line, but the matchups are pretty obvious, right? You don't have to be a genius to see this. Southampton are waiting for the moment to be more aggressive. They are seeing who their man is. Each of them has got one player. It is very easy for them to recognise the trigger, to then be more aggressive, to lock on, and again eventually to force us to play the ball back towards Onana. So this was one of the big problems for United in this game. We couldn't get on the ball because the first phase work just didn't work. Now, the second big problem for United was that we couldn't actually apply pressure to the ball either. So we were struggling to play out from the back ourselves, but also struggling to get pressure on the ball. Now, don't worry, there is a positive coming towards the end of the video. That's Ahmad. We're going to look at his performance. He was amazing. So that is still coming in this video. But what United struggled with was getting enough pressure on the ball. Now again, we can see that both sides realistically are going to match up. The big problem was that Southampton were much more fluid with their movement, they rotated more, and they asked more questions of Manchester United. They made it much more difficult than what we did in possession. For example, we would see rotations out wide, so Dibbling might move wider, that's going to drag Lisandro Martinez out, and now Mazraoui finds himself in a weird position where he's not too sure where he's meant to cover. The idea, I believe, was to try and be aggressive in moments, and Amorim said it after the game, and I do agree. I don't think this was a lack of enthusiasm. This wasn't the players downing tools after a couple of good games. That wasn't the case. We actually just physically were too slow to get there. I think the midfield too never really timed the jump right, and the big problem that we had there was if you don't get this bit right, there's a massive gap in front there. And the Southampton front three were all really willing to drop into these positions here, in this space, and the Manchester United centre-backs were terrified of going with them. In the first half in particular, all three of them were several yards off it. Yoro, of course, had a bad game, full stop. Really poor night for the guy, was beaten too easily. He's a young player, let's move on. De Ligt and Lisandro Martinez, also just a few yards off it in the first half. Second half, it sort of corrected. But in the first half, we were yards off it. So we're trying to press, but probably not with enough intensity, not enough speed in the way that we're playing. And that gives Southampton a little bit of time to find a space. And then again, when they're in these moments, it's going to be very, very easy for them. Situations like this, you can see Bruno wants us to be pressing. You can see him kind of commanding players around him, telling them where to go. And you can see what United are trying to do. The front three does lock on. You can see where the midfield is meant to be. You can see Ahmad from wing-back coming forward, although he's a little bit late on this occasion, which was one of the problems for United. We were late to these moments. But also in midfield as well, you can see Yoro's connecting, Ugate's trying to connect. But the problem is, there are so many situations in the first 15 minutes where the centre-backs were nowhere near where they needed to be. Now that isn't just a dig at the centre-backs, that is a tactical problem as well. So the midfielders were getting caught out, which left the centre-backs exposed. If it's happening to all three centre-backs, that would suggest it is tactical. And that's why for the first hour of the game, United had no control, because we couldn't get on the ball and play, but we also couldn't win the ball back, so it was a problem. Okay, so now it's time to finish on the positive, because Manchester United did win this football match 3-1, so there has to be some sort of positive. The question is, why did it change? For the first hour, Southampton were incredibly strong, and it just kind of faded away. Faded away, and United came strong into the game, made good substitutes, and took control. What was the big difference? What happened? To be honest, the subs did well, but actually Southampton physically, they just fell off a cliff. They worked so hard for the first 60 minutes. They were so intense with what they did. Around the hour mark, probably just after the hour mark, I would say, physically, they just lost so much. They lost so much. And when you're trying to play man-to-man, but you're slow to it, you give players a little bit of time and too much space. And we know that United have got quality footballers. In these moments, Højlund's coming off the pitch and Xerxes going on. We also saw Kobbie Mainoo come off. Bruno Fernandes go deeper into midfield. This gave us a better passing player in midfield as well, which I believe was important. We also had Collier on the pitch as well. There were a few changes that happened. Have I got too many players on the pitch right now? I'm not sure. But regardless, what's more important than anything here is Southampton physically dropped. Massively physically dropped, and it gave United time, and it finally, for the first time in the match, allowed United to dictate the speed of the game. It was now, when we wanted to speed it up, we sped it up. When we wanted to slow it down, we slowed it down. And that ultimately was the turning point for the football match. But in terms of the big positive of the night overall, is this man Ahmad. I've seen people say he played poorly in the first half, and I just don't think it's the case. From the start of the game, he was our best player. This wasn't a late 15-minute flurry. From start to finish, he was Manchester United's best player by a distance. And particularly at wing-back, he showed what he brings in that position. I did a video just over a week ago now, looking at Ahmad at wing-back and why he should play that position as opposed to the inside forward role. Now everyone told me it doesn't make sense to get an attacker further away from goal, but in this game we saw the impact. In recent weeks we have seen Mazraoui on the right-hand side, and when he picks the ball up in these positions, he's just not that much of an attacking threat. Even in the final third, in these areas, he doesn't give us too much. Ahmad, on the other hand, is very, very different, because what Ahmad wants to do when he gets the ball is be aggressive. Now, when I'm talking about Ahmad being aggressive, I'm not talking about him running about the pitch and kicking people and hitting people, but I mean being aggressive with his selections on the ball, being on the front foot. Every time he got the ball out wide, we can see this is 21 minutes into the game, in the first half. We can see that Ahmad wants to be direct, he wants to be positive, he wants to take players on, and ultimately gain territory for Manchester United, drag us up the pitch with the way that he was playing. In moments like this. He wants to get the ball and he wants to attack that byline. He actually gets some criticism from, at times, some lazy commentators in certain games for being too left-footed, for always moving inside the pitch. It's just not the case. He loves going down the outside as well, and this is why he's such a good talent. But you can see the gravity of Ahmad. Now, when I talk about gravity, I mean a player drawing the attention of multiple footballers, which is going to create room for someone else. This is what Ahmad does incredibly well. Now, on this occasion, he gets all the way to the byline, cuts the ball back for Garnacho. It's a good ball. Garnacho can't quite connect. It's fine. It's really good, though, from Ahmad. It's really good. And again, in terms of United actually having a dynamic wide threat, we haven't seen it in a couple of months, but Ahmad brings it every time he plays this position. Again, down the bottom, right-hand side, lots of speed. He draws 3 players towards him every time because he is that dangerous. Teams know he is good. There's, I hate to use the word, an aura about Ahmad on the ball at the moment. When he picks the ball up, you can tell that teams are genuinely terrified of him. Genuinely terrified. And in this match, even in the first half where United were poor, he always looked like the player that could pick the ball up, dance between players and make something happen. Again, this is really aggressive work. None of our other wing-back profiles can do this. It's why Ahmad is so important to the team. And then you get moments like this, the goals. 15 minutes to go. You need something. A bloke called Ahmad, ideally. He just took this into his own hands. Again, driving at the players. He was doing this all game, picking the ball up and driving. He needed more touches, granted, but he was being aggressive every time he did get the ball. Again, you can see that triangle of 3 players around him. And yes, there is luck in this. There is, of course, luck in this moment. But when you are aggressive, when you ask questions of defenders, when you just keep going, you're relentless with the way that you play, you earn your own luck. He only gets his deflection because he was aggressive and positive with the ball when he picked it up all the way back here. This is why he got his bit of luck, because he took players on, he tried to make something happen, and eventually scored a really good goal. The finish is lovely. The second one, again, picking the ball up here. I didn't really need to mark him there, did I? You can probably see him. But again, he's being aggressive, he's committing players. Now, initially, he takes it slower, he passes the ball back to Christian Eriksen, but this time it's his movement that is aggressive. Again, spinning in behind. The rest of the Manchester United players don't really move too much. Ahmad is always on the move, always on the go, looking to burst in behind. Xerxes also, we have to talk about him, and Christian Eriksen. The Eriksen pass, phenomenal. We know Christian Eriksen can do this, he's done it his whole career. An unbelievable pass, out of this world. But also Xerxes. We are looking at the space here. This is where Ahmad wants to go. Currently, there is a centre-back in the way. Xerxes makes sure there isn't. He pulls him out of that space. So it's really good from Xerxes. Video on him later today because he changed this game as well. So watch out for that. And again, the finish from Ahmad is just quality. But I actually think the goal which really sums up Ahmad is the one for the hat-trick, the intensity. This was a tough game after a tough game the other day where he played a decent amount of football. The intensity, late on to sprint. Still use intelligence, make good decisions with the way that he is pressing and closing down. And ultimately, scoring goals, scoring hat-tricks and winning football matches for Manchester United. Ahmad is one of the most important players for Ruben Amorim right now. Whether it's as a wing-back or an inside forward, he is crucial to the way that United play. In this game, United were not good. For 60 minutes, Southampton dominated and dictated the tempo of the game, and that is a problem that Ruben Amorim does need to address moving further forward. This isn't me being reactionary to a poor game. We've spoken about all of these problems in the past. There is an issue there. But also, when teams drop off and you've got the technical quality to take advantage of that, you make good subs, you do have to give a little bit of praise. We ended up with Garnacho and Ahmad at wing-back. That's aggressive compared to what we've done in the past. So Ruben Amorim does deserve praise. Ultimately, Ahmad deserves a lot of praise because he was unbelievable once again. And that plucky nature, the willingness to just keep going, eventually got him his goals and got Manchester United the win, which, did we deserve? Probably not, but it's an important 3 points, and we just move forward from here. In terms of today's video, we are finished there. We will be streaming later today, though, so make sure you join for that, and also another video tonight. So there's plenty coming. Subscribe with notifications on, please. But yeah, apart from that, we are finished for today. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.